In today's show, the Trailblazers clearly have some deficiencies. Is it time for them to make a move? Is it necessary? Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richman. Listen to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen. Coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, I want to ask a simple question with a fairly complex answer. Do the Trailblazers need to make a move? We'll get into all of that, why they might need to, what it might look like, and sort of all the challenges in shifting the roster mid-season, given what they are working with. We will get into all of that on this beautiful Friday afternoon, plus some minor news or some housekeeping stuff to close the show about when the Blazers are going to fill in the gaps in their December schedule. So, why I ask this, do the Blazers need to make a move, as opposed to say the Blazers need to make a move, is because the reality of making a trade prior to December 15th or even prior to the new year in the NBA season is relatively rare. It's just, Blazers roster is full. So they don't have an open roster spot. They cannot waive a player currently on the roster and sign a player even to a minimum contract without crossing into the luxury tax. Now, you could say, Mike, what does it matter if they cross a little bit, $1.5 million into the luxury tax in season? They can always make a trade to get out of it. I think the general risk there is that if you do that in, say, December, and then every team in the league knows you need to get out of the tax in February, people can really hold you over the barrel in negotiations. It's just a level of risk you rarely see teams take on. Do I think maybe they should entertain that? Yeah, but it's not my money, and it's also just a pretty rare thing across the league. It would be an uncommon move for them across the league. So just outright adding a veteran player via free agency seems very, very, very unlikely. But one of the reasons that we're even in this sort of space of how do they make a move? So if it's not adding a veteran player, we're talking about trades, and we're talking about potentially maybe switching out one of the two-way guys. But how they even got here, I think, is an important thing to note. The roster was a little light on guards when they when it was built. They just a lot light on ball handlers. That was obvious. And then they've just had the injuries that they've had, and injuries are part of the league. Every team is dealing with them. Their injuries that they have specifically struck players who they're guards, right? They're guard room. Also, their choice to bring on Damian Lillard, knowing that he was hurt, they were always going to have this roster spot. And I don't think they've really ever said it publicly, but privately, everyone in the Blazers organization knew that Damian Lillard wasn't going to play this year. They just weirdly haven't said it out loud. Although Dame has implied it very heavily that he won't play this season. But the whole everyone within the organization knew he wasn't going to play this year. They took a unique approach to that. So while they have some of these they have these options, I think why they got here is before we unpack the sort of what the details of those options and some of the latest rumors, how they got here is just dudes are hurt. And right now they're in a spot where they're scuffling, right? They're 19 games in, they're 8-11. They're facing maybe a daunting week ahead with Oklahoma City and then a road trip that takes them through Toronto, Cleveland, and Detroit before stopping in Memphis at the end of the road trip. And the end of the road trip against the worst team, that's the worst way to schedule. That's the bummerest way to schedule it. And I don't think Memphis is way, way, way worse than the Blazers. I think that's a fairly even game. So a bunch of tough games out on the road coming up. So they're, it's a team that wants to be competitive. They want to be in postseason action. They want to play in the play-in or beyond. So, they're not going to scrap the season. There's no world where they start intentionally losing on purpose. But, they don't have a lot of options. And one of the reasons they don't have a lot of options is just health. Scoot Henderson remains out several weeks away. He's had a 2 to 4 week reevaluation timeline on November 21st. We're a week into that. So he's somewhere between 1 and 3 weeks away from being reevaluated. And it's not, I don't think he's really doing anything close to playing basketball yet. Blake Wesley's probably looking at a return in February after breaking a bone in his foot. So like the guys that can return quickly are Drew Holiday and Matisse Thybulle. Matisse Thybulle was out 4 to 6 weeks with a fracture in his thumb, and then a surgery that followed. It was a 4 to 6 week timeline given on Halloween. Today, as you were listening to this, Friday, November 28th, that would put Drew at exactly the 4 week mark. So he's somewhere in the next 2-ish weeks. I think that's a safe bet that the couple that we will at least get an update on Matisse Thybulle's availability somewhere in the first 2 weeks of December. Drew Holiday is now a week into his 1 to 2 week timeline before he was going to be reevaluated for a calf injury. But yesterday evening, Tiago Splitter said that Drew Holiday's not really doing much. Like, he's shooting, but he's not really moving around. And he's like, part of what the Blazers are hoping for is just to get healthier, right? Because they do need some more bodies. They need some more options. So Drew could be back, although Splitter did not sound enthusiastic that he would be back next week. He said, "I don't know where he is." So it sounds like Drew is probably the long end of that timeline, or at least like the full 2 weeks before they reevaluate him. So we're probably looking at the first Friday in December before we hear an update on Drew at the earliest. Matisse Thybulle's probably somewhere in that range, or likely just a little bit beyond, and Scoot and Blake Wesley are deeper down the line into probably Christmas for Scoot and February for Blake Wesley. So with all those injuries, that's why you get to this place where it's like, yeah, they're starting two-way player Sidi Sissoko. Caleb Love, two-way player, has undrafted two-way guy, has become like a big part of their nightly rotation. Just like in general, their depth was already, at least if you listen to this podcast, their depth was already a question mark for them. Like, how many really quality NBA players did they have on the roster? And now they're dipping well beyond that, right? And so you get to this place where the question isn't whether they're good enough. The question is, it's pretty obvious that they just don't have enough positive contributors on a nightly basis to be put teams away. They can win some games, right? Like if Caleb Love has a career night and hits 6 threes and they can beat Golden State, and they're going to hang in games because they're relatively competitive and Denny Avdia is really good. But if they're going to get where they want to go, do they need to make a move for more ball handling, for more shooting? Is that something they can address? So let's talk about those options. What does that actually look like? I talked about how just the free agent, your free agent dreams kind of knock those off, just because realistically, dipping into the luxury tax probably takes them out of, it's just not a realistic option because the roster is full. So even if you say why they can just waive Ryan Rupert and add a better player, yeah, sure, they probably could do that, right? But because of the financial constraints, they're unlikely to do that. Should versus could is an important thing to remember here, because could versus will is an important thing to remember here, because what they'll functionally do is more important to consider than screaming they can, I swear. Okay. I'm making up a straw man and yelling at him. That's what happens when you record early in the morning. In any case, what are their options? Plus, which Trailblazers big man might be on the market? We're rumors and Blazers potential roster moves. We will do that in the second segment. Join me there. First, though, let's talk DoorDash. It's the NBA season, and DoorDash wants to bring food to your home. They found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the bag drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game, DoorDash drops 50% off your order with Dash Pass the next day. And you're automatically entered for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. We're talking player-inspired drip, exclusive gear, and stuff you actually want. DoorDash has you covered for late-night highlights, last-minute watch parties, and double OT fuel-ups. So next time someone goes off for 50, use the promo code NBA 50 the next day to get 50% off on DoorDash with Dash Pass. Plus, your shot at the bag drop. Dash Pass members only, 50% off up to $10 the day after a 50-point game with the promo code. Terms apply, no purchase necessary. Ends April 13th, open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. DoorDash in your bag all season long. Today's show is also brought to you by DUER. They're making really comfortable jeans. I'm rocking the performance denim. I got them in the classic taper. They're just comfortable pants. I rock them the black jeans. They look good for if I need to do something nice, like go out for dinner and drinks. But they also are just super comfortable if I'm lounging around the house because DUER jeans have 5 times the stretch of traditional denim. DUER combines classic jeanswear style with the kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. It's the best of both worlds. DUER are the pioneers of blending technical innovation with everyday clothing. They invented the original performance denim. They are jeans made to do. Simply put, DUER makes the world's most comfortable pants without having to sacrifice style. Trust me, once you try these, they'll be your go-to. And you can check DUER out in-store right here in Portland on 23rd. That's 820 Northwest 23rd Avenue. Pick up a pair for yourself as an amazing holiday gift. And you can mention my promo code LOCKEDONPortland in-store to get 15% off your first order, or check them out online at shopDUER.com/LockedOnPortland for 15% off. That's shopDUER.com/LockedOnPortland. All right. Let's start with the rumor. You know you want the rumor, you want the juice. Who's getting traded? The Blazers have played 19 games. I need them to make a roster move. According to Jake Fisher, writing for the Stein Line, Portland, I'm quoting here, Portland is forecasted to be more willing to move Robert Williams III this season compared to last season when the Trailblazers maintained a high asking price for the oft-injured big man. The way that is written is funny to me because it suggests a little bit of subjectiveness. Like, boy, they should have traded this dude last year. But I think that it's been well reported that the Blazers, they like Rob Williams. When they first acquired him from Boston, it was like they're shipping Drew out, but they're keeping Rob Williams. And last year was like, at least according to Fisher from the Stein Line, it's like the Blazers, they have a high asking price, and then eventually it was like unlikely to trade Rob Williams. They like him. And I like him too as a player, as a person. I think he's cool. He's a fun player. He just plays limited minutes, and then with the injury history, that you just can't run up his minutes that much. And he's real quick, as an aside on Robert Williams. Robert Williams came in this season. He had attempted 7 total three-pointers in his entire career. He's taken 6 this season. They've turned Rob Williams into a guy who sometimes launches from the corner. Now, they don't go in. He's made one of them, but he sometimes launches from the corner. So one of, there's your rumor. So one of the ways that the Trailblazers make deals make moves is trading someone on the roster. The problem is that their most tradable parts, their most sort of valuable pieces are part of the plan. As if you're cooking up fake trades, Shaedon Sharpe and Toumani Camara, based on when they signed extensions, cannot be traded this season. So go ahead and throw those out. It's like Scoot Henderson's hurt or whatever. So you're talking about trading draft picks, and it's like Drew Holiday is a good player, but he's a big contract, so I think that kind of depresses his value a little bit. Jeremy Grant's probably really hard to trade at his price point. It's just like how they actually upgrade the roster is tough. But because Rob Williams is on an expiring deal, there is a world in which Rob Williams procures some value, but you have to be reasonable about what that value might look like. It's not like a first round pick and a young prospect. That's a trade for Rob Williams. That's a trade for a theoretical Rob Williams from several seasons ago. The reality of Rob Williams does not likely yield a first round pick. I just can't imagine that he does, just because you have to think about what the teams that are trading for Rob Williams are also aware of his limitations. If you are, dear listener, so are NBA front offices. So you're not talking about juicy draft picks, right? Maybe a heavily protected first or something like that actually is a fake first round pick that becomes seconds, or just seconds. Or I think more accurately, what you're talking about if you're trading Rob Williams is what the value of expiring contracts often brings. quality players on contracts the other team doesn't want. If you think about what they traded for Anthony Simons, this is kind of gives you an outline of what a best case scenario Rob Williams trade could sort of look like. The Blazers flipped Anthony Simons for what I called at the time probably the best player they possibly could have traded him for in terms of just like value for this season. And Drew Holiday has been very good when he has been on the court for the Blazers. The downside of the Drew Holiday contract is that he is paid, or of the Drew Holiday experience is that he's paid for the next 2 seasons. His contract runs for the 2 more years after this. He's making like $37 million when he's 37 years old. There is real risk with committing money to players at that age deep in, several seasons down the line, particularly for a team that's sort of on the way up and not like already at this, like the top of the spot where they want to be and kind of getting pushed over the top. Instead, this is a team still climbing with money out into the future. There's real risk in the Holiday trade, although he has immediately been very, very effective for the Blazers. No doubt about it. So if you're looking at a best case scenario for the Rob Williams deal, it's something like that. It is, can you find matching money that works for Rob in which you take back multiple years down the line for a player that is, impactful, but maybe, if not overpaid, just a contract that is too long. Fairly paid in the moments, but some risk down the line with money owed to them. That's the type of best case scenario for Rob Williams. So that's one path, right? That probably is, Matisse Thybulle is also an expiring contract. You could look at that as in a similar vein, right? And even you could package them together in some ways and find a similar vein where you're taking back future money. That is the value of expiring contracts, the willingness to take back future money. You're not that is where Rob, you can maximize his value. So that's one way the Blazers get better. Do they need to make a move? Because what do they need? They need more shooting. They need more ball handling. That's just obvious. The defense has just not been very good this year. I don't think that when you look at the roster, that you think like, oh, they've got to upgrade their defensive parts, right? I don't think that's necessarily true. But because they have relatively limited tradable players, like highly coveted tradable players, it is the creative way in which you structure these trades to make it happen. And I think if the Cronin front office has been good at one thing, it is certainly structuring recent trades. They had some dicey trades at the beginning of their tenure, but some recent trades. And I think that's their path to being to getting better. So free agency is probably out. Trade season doesn't really heat up until at the very earliest December 15th. That's when many players that were signed deals in the offseason get their trade restrictions lifted. Usually you don't see moves until late December and then into January, and then you see more action right around the February trade deadline. So the idea that this is going to happen in the next 2 weeks seems really unlikely. The Blazers are very likely to roll forward with this group. If they did want to make an immediate move, they basically have one path to do so. Because of free agent signings off the table, and because just the realities of the trade market will move slower than their maybe immediate needs, the one way they could change things is to flip out some of their two-way guys. Two-way contracts are non-guaranteed. You basically get paid by the week and bi-weekly in the NBA, and they don't count against the salary cap. So while you have to pay these guys their money, they're not volunteers, it is at least in terms of impact on your salary cap and roster machinations, it is relatively neutral. It's tough for players, right? It's a very it's a fragile and fickle world. But if a team needs to sort of churn through guys, this is the way to do it. They're playing Caleb Love a lot, and he's just not good. As explained here on the podcast, I was very skeptical that he was an NBA player. Also, he's an undrafted player who signed a two-way contract. The idea that he would just magically be a net positive in his first NBA season is far-fetched. The plan was not for him to play, right? That's not the plan. Sissoko's got a little more NBA seasoning than Love, but he's. I think Sissoko's interesting because he's just really big and he has some passing chops, but he has some obvious limitations, and he's not the quality of player where you can just put the ball in his hands and expect him to do stuff. So he has to play this sort of off-ball spacer role, and that probably is not doesn't get the most out of him, but he's not good enough to play in his sort of ideal role. It's tough. He's an interesting two-way guy. I think he's actually a really good outcome for a two-way player because he can he fits their sort of style and ethos pretty well, but he's just he's a reasonable expectation for a two-way guy. He has some obvious limitations. And Javonte Cook, who has made his NBA debut this year as his former D2 guy from the Dash, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. But grinded his way to the G League to get this opportunity with the Blazers. He's a fun story, but if the Blazers need help, that's the way. That's the player that gets cut. Is the challenge is though is like, or not the challenge. I think the calculation you're doing here is the Blazers signed Javonte Cook not because they thought he would help in November of 2025. He's an upside swing. They want him to be better into the future, right? They're buying that he grows into something, not that he is something already. So are they willing to cut bait this quickly in order to quote unquote upgrade, or at least I think more accurately, try something new with the two-way spot? And you have to have realistic expectations with what the two-way spot is. If there was just like this magic NBA player available, he'd probably already be on a roster. Not that you can't find a quality player with that, just that you are going to be largely dart throwing, searching for a diamond in the rough, and players have to have fewer than 4 years of NBA experience. So you are, by virtue, signing someone with limited or very limited or NBA experience, or like right at the cusp, and hoping that they kind of have not yet played their fourth year of NBA action. They've played 3 or fewer seasons in the league. So that's probably if they really want to try to add more shooting, more ball handling, flipping out probably Cook, quite frankly, because he's the only one who's not playing with regularity, is probably their path forward. It's just that is a move to make a move, but it is not the thing that solves them. But that doesn't answer the question. I think the question that I asked to pose at the beginning is, do the Blazers need to make a move? What I've answered so far is, will the Blazers make a move? And I think they may have eventually, but the idea that they would do that in the immediate term seems very unlikely, just based on their realistic options, based on where their roster is. But do they need one? Do they need to make a move? Let's just go ahead and answer that question 20 minutes into the show. Join me in the third segment, won't ya? First, though, let's talk FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. No better place to get on the action than FanDuel. Even if you miss the start of the games and you can't bet on, pregame money lines or pregame point spreads, you can ride the hot hand because FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score the next point to fourth quarter comebacks. You can bet live point spreads. You can bet live money lines, and you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It's another layer to your viewing experience. If you're already plopped down on the couch or at a bar stool at a restaurant, you can add a little something extra to the games you are already watching with FanDuel. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets with your first when your first $5 bet wins. So find a bet you like, put down $5 on it, and when it hits, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the FanDuel app. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. And I'm going to finally answer a question that I posed at the top of the show. Do the Trailblazers need to make a move? Yeah, probably. Yes, they probably do. Going into the season, it was pretty clear that they were light on shooting and light on guards. I was personally fairly skeptical of their center rotation, although I think with a healthy Rob and Donovan Clingan is a pretty good center rotation. They're a little light behind that because Young Hunson's not ready and Duop Reith is a limited player, although a player I like. I viewed this team as imperfect, right, heading into the season, personally. Although I liked them, their upside, I just think, yes, they do need to make a move. The challenge is, as laid out here at the top of the show, it's hard to do so. So while I say yes, they do need to add more shooting, and yes, I do think they need to add more ball handling, I am not going to scream for them that they get it done because it's just not realistic. It's just not realistic. You go into the season knowing what your flaws are, hoping to address them, right? At some point, you hope to have a team with limited flaws. But as the Blazers are continuing to build forward, this roster had some very obvious known flaws that anyone willing to be honest about what they had was, could see them plainly. Yeah, where are they going to get shooting? And that was even before Toumani Camara forgot how to shoot. Baked in, it was like, well, Toumani's like a league average, slightly above league average three-point shooter for a season and a half, 100 games of being a good three-point shooter in the league, and now he's shooting 30% from three. Yikes, right? So, like, even one of the guys you thought, like, well, he could shoot, hasn't been able to shoot. So do they need to make a move? Yes, eventually. Yes. If they want to be competitive, I don't think you can roll forward with, maybe if Scoot gets healthy and Matisse Thybulle gets healthy, maybe you don't need to upgrade the guard room as much, but you probably do need to add some plus shooting somewhere, some way, somehow. That needs to be a skill that you really prioritize. The problem is the rest of the league also values shooting. It's like it is a coveted skill, and finding a way for that, you can't just plop Steve Novak onto the court and be like, yeah, this will work just fine. Like the modern league is they'll hunt. You need some versatility in the skill sets as well. But I'll say this. I think the simplest thing that the Blazers could do to upgrade the roster is have Shaedon Sharpe get back rolling. Before he hurt his right calf, he had like a 5-game stretch, 6-game stretch where he was like totally fine. Like he was like, he really struggled the first 4 or 8 games of the season. And then he kind of settled into just being like looking much more normal, at like a normal version of Shaedon Sharpe. That's not a perfect player, right? Like Sharpe still has his own limitations, but just like a totally functional offensive player. I think he cut out some of his harder step back 3-point attempts, started attacking the rim more, kind of dialed in what he does well and focused on doing it. In that first game back against the Spurs, he walked into 3 straight mid-range jumpers right at the elbows in the first quarter, and it's like smooth as butter. And then they didn't let him walk into those shots as much, and then he just looked like a dude not playing with his rhythm. But I think he'll get his rhythm back as he plays more, assuming that he can stay healthy. So while I do think they eventually need to make a move, I think the simplest thing is just like get Sharpe back, who is like, even with all of Sharpe's struggles this year, very clearly their third best offensive option in terms of shot creating, if not better than that, right? Like it's him or Jeremy Grant. I think Jeremy's been better than him this season, but the idea that Sharpe couldn't get better than Jeremy Grant with like 10 days of good play, like, oh yeah, he's been, clearly he's healthy, he's right. It's like, yeah, obviously he's talented. He spent all of last year probably being better than Jeremy Grant. The idea that he couldn't get back there in a hurry seems silly to me. So, like, yes, they need to make a move. Yes, they need shooting. Yes, that's the obvious thing to address because that would help the offense. I think they have enough defensive personnel that I think they can be better on that end, although they have struggled. But that particularly just stand still, knockdown shooting. Denny Avdia just driving to the paint, kicking out to guys who are missing wide open shots. Adding a knockdown standstill shooter, not even Duncan Robinson flying off screens and playing crazy, but like just someone who can hit a reliable catch and shoot jump shot at, make 3 a game if they get 8 wide open ones. Would be massively helpful. But I think the simplest way to upgrade this roster is just have Shaedon Sharpe get healthy. And the question for Sharpe is not whether he's good. The question is consistency. Can he hit the high notes? Can he play 45, 65 really good games in a row? We have seen him have stretches where he is clearly very good. We have seen moments and flashes where he is a special talent, right? And it also seems to click. But the question from bench to starter, from starter to star, from good to great is consistency. How often can you hit the high notes? And so what the Blazers need is Sharpe to get back, get healthy, and play 45 straight games of the level that he played for a 5-game stretch right before he got hurt, where he was averaging 24 and shooting right at or just shade above league average true shooting percentage, right? They need him to be better than that, but if he averages 24 on average shooting, yeah, right. You're gonna be just fine, right? Like you're gonna be just fine. That's a kind of what they need because they just need someone else who can go score. Because I think, particularly against the Spurs, it's like Denny gave them all he had and then ran out of gas. And when he ran out of gas, he played like a tired person. Oh, he played 40 minutes and he's tired. Surprise! You just there's just like a level that you gotta there's a limits to the human body. Okay, a little bit of housekeeping stuff as we get into it. The Blazers as we get out of it, I should say. Blazers were limited eliminated from NBA Cup contention, but the thing is, you still only got 80 games on your schedule to begin the season, so there's 2 games to fill in. Teams that are out of the Cup will have games scheduled. It's either going to be December 11th or 12th for the first game, and the 14th or 15th. You're going to get 1 home game and 1 road game during that stretch. So the Blazers probably will end up with like a Friday, Sunday, if I had to guess. That would be 12 and 14, although they could get some other version of that, depending. That those are the 11th is a Thursday, so they could conceivably Thursday, Sunday, or any combination, any permutation thereof. So you're gonna have 1 more home game on the schedule in that second week of December. You're gonna have sometime another road game in that same stretch. That will be determined based on the games that happen this evening. We're listening to Friday, November 28th program, and the final Cup games and this final seeding will be played tonight, and then we'll know where things stand. So the next time you hear my voice, we will talk about the holes in the schedule that have been filled. We will also talk about a game against Oklahoma City Thunder. On Sunday, the Blazers play a matinee against the league's best team. It is their final meeting with the Thunder this season. Holy cow. Get them out of the way early. A win against the shorthanded Thunder squad, an absolute thrashing against a mostly healthy Thunder squad, and now a matinee against a Oklahoma City team that is just still chugging along. Join me for that show. Next time you hear my voice, that's what we'll talk about. Come back for that one. Come back for 5 shows next week. Hope you had a good little Thanksgiving, and if you're not a Thanksgiving celebrator, hope you had time off from work that you were able to enjoy in the way that you enjoy it. I'm thankful for y'all. Appreciate you listening. Come back for more shows. Tell your friends about the program. I appreciate you. I'll talk to you soon.